I wanted to just make sure to introduce myself, kind of give an overview before we got started tonight. And thank you guys so much for attending, of course, on a Sunday later in the evening. So I really appreciate you all coming. I'm sure we're going to have people that are starting to log in just now. But to keep with time, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to really quickly share my screen here. Let's see. Because I'd like to do a really brief overview of just this week, what we're going to be doing tonight, and then, of course, our organization for anybody that's not familiar. Let's see. All right, hopefully you guys can see that. And then please feel free at any point. Also, if anybody's got any questions, comments, anything that they're just kind of watching the film and you say, hey, I don't want to forget about this or want to make sure that they ask this in the Q&A at the end, please drop that in chat. I'll make sure to get those to the panelists once we get to that point. But again, thank you for joining. My name is Nikki. I'm the VP of Development at Palm Beach Tech. And this is actually our last event of Global Entrepreneurship Week. So just wanted to give a shout out to a lot of organizations that we had partnered with all throughout the week. Some of them, you can see their logos here below. We did have a wonderful partner for, I guess, the first part of this event. They actually did an in-person showing, I believe on Thursday at General Provision in person. So thank you to them as well. So the film we're going to be seeing tonight, Coded Bias, it's a Shalini Kataya film. It actually was just released a few days ago. So you guys are probably one of the first people to see this, which is wonderful for us. And after the screening, we're going to be having a panel discussion and really just an open discussion from a few of our Black leaders here in South Florida. Temanté Leary, who I believe is on already tonight, from Black Men Talk Tech. Aliya Aaron from Nursing Innovation Hub, I believe she's on as well. Gregory Jensen from Code for South, who we actually just recently signed a partnership with that we're really excited about. And Chris Cunney from DSS Inc. Just to thank a few of the partners alongside Palm Beach Tech is the Center for Black Innovation, General Provision, and then O Cinema. And just real briefly, anybody that's familiar with our events, I always kind of do a little slide in the very beginning. I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this, just because the important part is the film, not so much us. But for anybody that's not familiar, Palm Beach Tech, we are a tech nonprofit based here in South Florida with the whole goal and mission of building South Florida into a tech hub. And our community creed, Palm Beach Tech is wholeheartedly committed to being a welcoming, collaborative, and inclusive community for all. We put inclusivity first, engage to others, and are considerate to all, and don't sell to people. Anybody that is just interested in more information about our organization and how we're bringing the tech community together, you can simply go to palmbeachtech.org. Again, a little bit more about us on the corporate side is right now we're currently at about 200 corporate members from Martin County to Miami. So we touch a little bit of the startup community, business, tech community, and a little bit everything in between. So we've got your smaller startups all the way to your larger companies like City Furniture, Florida Crystals, Office Depot, so everything in between. And I'm not going to touch too much on our membership, but if anybody's interested in the corporate memberships, again, you can go to palmbeachtech.org and there's a join today button there with more information. Some of our events, so events such as these, we have currently right now about 4 to 5 different events that we have on a weekly basis. From our tech talks on Monday nights, which we do have a half hour of networking before the presentation starts. We have community coffees on Tuesdays, which are our panel discussions. Podcasts on Wednesdays from 1 to 1:30, and educational workshops on Fridays at 10 a.m., in addition to any of our quarterly or annual events such as Global Entrepreneurship Week. Just real quickly, anybody that's looking for a job, we do have, again, at our website, if you go to the careers tab, there's actually a resume distributor where you can just upload your resume and it's sent to all of our members all at once, or we do have an actual job board listed there as well. And last thing here before we get started is if anybody's interested in joining our Slack channel, you can see the URL there, or the simplest thing to be added to our newsletters is you can actually just text 561-250-7206. Just text your email address. Again, it's 561-250-7206. and we'll add you to our e-newsletters on Monday.
During my first semester at MIT, I got computer vision software that was supposed to track my face. It didn't work until I put on this white mask. I'm thinking, all right, what's going on here? Is it the lighting conditions? Is it the angle at which I'm looking at the camera, or is there something more? That's when I started looking into issues of bias that can creep into technology.
Our ideas about technology that we think are normal are actually ideas that come from a very small and homogeneous group of people.
Vast amounts of data at incredible speeds.
Everybody has unconscious biases, and people embed their own biases into technology.
This kid got stopped as a result of facial recognition misidentification, and then used that as justification to search you. This is an innocent child.
Racism is becoming mechanized.
Systemic issues are only going to be hardwired into new technologies.
It's not just face classification, it's any data-centric technology.
Every day, we are all being scored.
Who gets hired, who gets housing.
I am making predictions for your life right now.
The people who own the code deploy it on other people, and there is no accountability.
Management analytic towers wanted to install the facial recognition software. Pretty much turn this place into Fort Knox.
The technology is being rapidly adopted, and there are no safeguards.
We are socially controlled in a way that we don't see.
Technology that analyzes faces could be biased, but the company is pushing it anyway.
What demographic is it most effective on?
White men.
Show me that it's going to be fair, that it's legal, before you put it out. That's what we don't have yet.
It's going to take people coming together, striving for justice in this age of automation.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started with our discussion tonight. Again, for anybody that missed the intros here, I'm going to go through and just briefly introduce our panelists. We've got Temanté Leary, co-founder at Black Men Talk Tech, Aliya, the founder and CEO of Nursing Innovation Hub and AMR Healthcare, and then Gregory Jensen, the co-founder at Code for South. And unfortunately, Chris Cooney, who's the Chief Strategy and Business Officer over at DSS, I don't think he's able to make it tonight, but did want to at least give him a shout out. I wanted to, before we got actually into the Q&A session, if each of you could just introduce yourselves a little further, tell us about what you do and your organization, and then we can go right into the QA. I'm just going to start with who's first on my screen. So I've got first Temanté.
Sure. My name is Temanté Leary. I'm a co-founder of Black Men Talk Tech. We're an entrepreneurship collective of tech founders, Black male tech founders who are trying to normalize the narrative of what a Black male tech founder looks like. We culminate each year in an annual conference that brings together everyone really, but definitely is centered around networking, education, learning. We have a lot of content for founders and investors to connect with each other, or I should say learn from each other, but also it's an environment for everyone to connect, be able to find that next investor, maybe that next co-founder, that next partner. And it's a great learning experience. All in all, it's supposed to educate as far as our conference. We are expanding our conference to, I should say we're expanding Black Men Talk Tech to different chapters throughout the country in 2021. So we're looking forward to that. As you can see, I work for Microsoft as well. We have a lot of, we were mentioned in the film. We have a lot of things that we're trying to do, I guess, as an organization to address some of the issues that we saw in coded bias at Microsoft. I'm also a co-founder at Class Updates as well, which is my ed tech startup company. Boys, sorry if you hear my boys in the background. They're excited about their fall break starting tomorrow. But yeah.
Quite all right.
So, but yes, I'm glad to be here, and thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself.
Of course, of course. Yeah, and I would say it's okay for anybody that's got dogs or kids in the back, because I know I was worried about that too. I've got 2 of each, so. So thank you so much, Temanté. And the next one I have on my screen is Gregory.
Hey everyone, my name is Gregory Jensen, founder of Code for South. We're the largest nonprofit focused on public interest technology based in Florida. We work with Miami-Dade County and a bunch of other local municipal governments in building technology related to helping the public's interest. We do day-to-day projects, doing coding end-to-end, so diving deep into a lot of the things talked about in Code and Bias. Outside of that, I've worked in the technology field for 8 years. I started off in 2 technology that worked in healthcare that were sold, both for multi-million-dollar deals. And I've spent most of my life working with engineers, designers, and people that are building these algorithms and things related to predictive models that can really impact people in either the healthcare or local government space. So happy to be here to talk and share a little bit about my views. Thanks, Nikki, for having me.
Of course, thanks, Gregory. And I'm really looking forward to also our new partnership. I'm really looking forward to a lot of the things that you guys got going on and kind of bringing that to our county as well. So thank you for being here. And of course, last but not least, Aliya.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hi. So my name is Aliya Aaron, and fun fact, small world. So found out that Temanté and I both are from Charlotte and graduated from the same high school, right? And we, so I am the founder, CEO of 2 health tech companies, one being an innovation center focused specifically on nurse-led tech startups and healthcare innovations. So Nursing Innovation Hub is what I'm speaking about. And our mission and goal is to develop digital health solutions to improve healthcare. With that being said, our main focuses are on women's health, minorities' health, and pandemic response. And so within the minority health, obviously, one of my focus is healthcare disparities. So we understand, my background is nursing, critical care and trauma, and nursing research. I'm also a software developer, so I understand the gap in clinical as well as technical. And so we bridge the gap to really look at how we can dive deeper into eradicating those disparities when it comes to healthcare.
Very good. Thank you, Aliya. And just so that everybody kind of knows here, I mean, I want to kind of style this conversation as an open discussion. So if there's anything that each of you just wants to add, or even if you want to ask each other questions, I'm totally open to whatever you guys want to add to the conversation here. I've just got some questions on my end to kind of guide us. But my very first question would be, after watching that film, what is your immediate reaction, or what is maybe something that you had no idea about until watching this film? And that question goes to anybody.
Yeah. Well, this is Aliya. I can say that because I've been in the healthcare industry for such a long time, and I've worked both in acute care as well as in the healthcare leadership side, I was not surprised at the outcome because that is the research that we study. But I am super excited that it is becoming more known and that we're focusing more on it across the industries. I know in healthcare, we have a particular, it's been one of our pain points. So it remains one of our pain points. We have, especially now during COVID, because the numbers are rising, and the statement is that a lot of African Americans are particularly prone to COVID, when in fact, we are, a lot of African Americans, a lot of Blacks are already have chronic diseases that they are trying to manage. And because of that, when COVID hits, they're already at a higher rate. And so when we look at healthcare technology and the new technologies that to improve, we look at how AI and machine learning and the other technologies play into the fact of improving healthcare, not just for a particular population, but we know that humans come in all forms and fashions. So we have to design these new technologies to really dig deeper into each area from a racial and gender point. So I'm just excited that it's being talked about at a higher level.
I mean, immediately, I'm just kind of wondering, me as a Black man, how these algorithms may be affecting me or have affected me without me even knowing. Also as a lawyer, non-practicing, but one that does teach law, a lot of legal considerations came to mind in watching the film. From number one, a regulation standpoint, federally, I think that's something that we should definitely push for. Also, I think my son just wants to be on camera. Also, you know, from the corporate standpoint, you know, corporate, you know, accountability and transparency when it comes to their use of this technology and the data. I know, you know, there have been some bold pledges that have been made from companies like Microsoft, Amazon, for example. But, you know, let's hold the task, you know, what they are saying they're going to do, and let's you know, stay focused on it. And as Aliya said, I'm glad there's more awareness about these issues, so we can kind of keep them, you know, the focus on them and keep them in the forefront, and, you know, hopefully hold people accountable as well.
Yeah, for sure. And Nurse Innovation Hub is actually a Microsoft partner, and so we're looking at how to eradicate a lot of disparities through healthcare, through the use of technology, partnering with Microsoft. So good stuff.
Yeah, I think there wasn't anything in there that was surprising for me per se. I think one of the things that I wish I saw more of is behind the problem. You know, tech diversity and inclusion is a bigger problem. And if you look at a lot of these companies, the makeup in terms of race and gender isn't the same. So there's a lot behind the scenes that gets into that. I think from a perspective of what I loved in that film was the use cases that touched on real people being impacted by this. And I think, like, beyond what we've seen, the bigger companies like Microsoft and IBM and IBM, Microsoft, Amazon, this year, they decided not to sell facial recognition to police departments. And Microsoft is actually one of the first to kind of go and say, hey, facial recognition needs to be regulated. I think beyond that, there needs to be steps at the local level, especially when you think about neighborhoods and municipal, to understand how automated decision-making systems used by government today are outdated and are still impacting people. So I think it went good on the high level, but there's so many different cases that we, a part of our community, need to touch on in order to improve how these things are happening, to reduce bias, as well as to acknowledge the systems that are really hurting people.
Yeah, and I would like to see.
Oh, go ahead, Aliya.
I was going to say, I would like to see a statement from these companies saying what they're doing, what is their position to help improve this. Like, we all know it's a known fact, right? So what is the position? What are you doing? Are you being more inclusive? And we're not just talking about a diversity day, right? Once a year. We're not talking about Black History Month. We're talking about 365. What are we doing to be more inclusive, to really attack the issues at hand, because we understand what the problems are, we see where the gaps are, and we see where there are improvements. And so, you know, what comes to mind is that when we talk about racial bias, when we talk about algorithms, we talk about how, you know, they're able to divide, you know, with what's going on right now with COVID and Black Lives Matter. A lot of companies have, I call it, joined the bandwagon, where they realize, oh, right, so people are really putting a lot of focus in on this. And so it's bigger than AI and technology, right? It's bigger than the Black Lives movement at this time, because we've been moving for a long time. It just so happened that there happens to be a spotlight on it. So we can appreciate platforms like this. We can appreciate films like Coded Bias. And so the next step for me is, what is being done to help solve these known problems? Because it takes more than us.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you know, what Gregory mentioned as far as, you know, companies agreeing not to, you know, do business with law enforcement in the regard of, you know, using, you know, AI, facial recognition. I think that should probably be permanent, or at least more than a year, because, you know, this is kind of a newly kind of focused on issue that, you know, there's a lot of research being done. There's a lot of things that are still developing. So the ban should be, you know, should either be permanent or it should be, you know, long enough where, I should say, it should last longer than a year to where, you know, more research can be done, more measures can be taken if they are going to continue to do business with law enforcement, to where, you know, not only is it transparent, but it looks different, because at the end of the day, you're doing business with the inherently biased system, you know, an inherently discriminatory system when it comes to people of color. And so just that in and of itself should, in my opinion, should cause pause, and more than a year pause. But that's just, you know, my add to that point.
Yeah, and I did want to add there too, actually, because when I was watching the film, because this, of course, was my first time watching with all of you, so I was writing just a bunch of comments and questions down for myself. And Randy in chat here had wrote that we need to support women of color in computer science education who are going to be the future gatekeepers, watch and change from within. If not, the target will just be moved. So he said bias systems are constantly morphing and camouflaging. And, you know, that kind of went along with one of the comments that I had written down here was Joy in the film had said, especially for Black women, said, expect your research to be dismissed, which that kind of stuck out to me, because I feel like we already have such an issue of getting, you know, our young students into technology or into STEM programs, especially females and especially Black females. So when we see, you know, bias in AI like this, I feel like all the more reason why we need to get Black people and Black females into tech. But how do you combat something or get, you know, these young Black girls into tech when they already have that feeling, like Joe, you know, that Joy said, is that expect that a lot of your research is just going to be dismissed because of your skin color. Like, how do we get the young girls into tech knowing that?
So one of the really good resources here in South Florida, there's a chapter, Black Girls Code, which I volunteer for. Super, super duper helpful group for young Black girls. It really gets the girls excited. It supports them and educates them and mentors them throughout their STEM interests and careers. It's bigger than South Florida. It's actually started over in California, but there's chapters throughout. So organizations like that really put a focus in on supporting and educating these youth really play a huge part. But in addition to that, we also have to look at not only the education system itself. Our current education system does not support, you know, the need for more women in STEM, right? And it starts from the elementary level. So with that being known, the industry experts like myself, like you, and others that are on the call, we really have to stand up and be advocates for girls, particularly minorities in STEM.
I agree. Oh, go ahead, Gary. I see you came off mute.
Yeah, sure. I think about it in a couple of ways. I think first it comes from investments. At Microsoft, the Civic Innovation Team, we invested $2 million in education companies and nonprofits, Code Art Girl. We also did an investment in WinCode. I think it comes from that stance, and I think it also comes from recognizing where the problem stands. As somebody that has had the opportunity to work for early stage companies, bigger tech companies, late stage companies, we have to recognize the elephant in the room, and that's culture. You know, and the culture that's breeding a lot of the things that we see today. It's like, okay, you hire one software engineer that happens to be a woman. If she's in a conversation and trying to defend her idea and it's a bunch of men not giving her space to talk or get her idea across, then that's not a culture that's going to be really inclusive. So I think it's about that. For education, I also agree on that point. We've been working a lot, especially with Code Fever, and like educating more Black and brown folks about STEM as well as AI, and making it easier for them to understand like the repercussions of things like face apps or the new tools that they're using. I think it starts there, but it also starts with making sure that we have a lot of people that are visible leaders, proving that you don't have to be just a face in the community, but you can also be qualified as well as somebody that's performing at a high level. I think breaking down those barriers are what we're going to see to kind of like move the needle a little bit.
I agree. And I think, I think all of you on this panel today, and even some of the people here watching, I mean, you guys are leaders in the community that are being the face for these young, students that are getting into tech. I mean, just seeing Aliya, seeing yourself, and even I know we've got Felicia on here. I think all of you guys are people, mentioned even like Code Fever, making a big difference in our community and getting students involved in it. So I very much agree with that.
Yeah, I mean,
that Junior Achievement, I saw they were one of the partners.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Junior Achievement is an excellent resource. I'm actually on one of the committees and mentor with Junior Achievement here in South Florida. And the reason I do that is to get out in front of these students and let them see someone that looks like them, right? How inspiring is it to be a young Black female and to and to see someone walk into the classroom, not just sit behind the desk, right? But come into the classroom and actually work with you and talk to you about what it means to be an engineer, what it means to be a scientist, a researcher, a nurse, a doctor, and so forth, and have that communication, because oftentimes you only know what you're exposed to. And so there are a lot of areas here that are underprivileged, underserved, and they don't have the opportunities to really understand what is STEM, right? What does that mean? And so getting out into the community here in South Florida is very important. And we have to continue to do that to educate the youth and to get them involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Gregory and Aliya said. They definitely have to see it to be it. So it's really important to get out there and be visible. As a leader, I actually did an event earlier this week with the Teen Court, with the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust, and a couple of them asked me. It was basically I introduced myself, spoke a little bit about myself, my background, and then we went around and let the youths ask questions, and a lot of them were like, what is it like working at Microsoft? And I could tell I was probably the first young Black person that they've seen, that worked at Microsoft. And that, those are, examples like that, for them to actually see me and see what I represent, I think is definitely inspiration. Also, at Microsoft, we have a huge focus on STEAM, adding the A in there when it comes to, especially the K through 12 space. We have entire training teams that are dedicated to STEAM workshops for K-12 students, which is actually a big focus of mine as far as my work at Microsoft. And so, again, definitely getting out in front of these students, letting them see faces like myself, working for companies like Microsoft. I think that is definitely the where it starts, and just continuing to give them opportunities to get involved. Definitely with organizations like Felicia's with the Center for Black Innovation, which is basically kind of umbrella all of her movements, from Code Fever to her space called Tribe, things like what she's doing, and also furthering that research when it comes to Black innovation, I think also is very much needed. And we need to see more organizations like that as well.
Agreed. Yeah, and congratulations to her too. I know she just had some recent big news with that. I watched the videos with a space called Tribe, everything coming down and Black innovation going up. So congratulations, Felicia, because I know you're here tonight. And I did want to kind of tag on a thought onto that, Temanté, because you had mentioned, you made the statement like, you can't be what you can't see, and seeing more Black and brown people in tech. And I'm just, there was a comment that came through the private chat, and that kind of went along another question that I had written down was, do you think that it's more us trying to push for regulations towards diversity, inclusion, and just having representation in our tech? Or do you think it starts with actually having more people that are Black and brown working in tech? Like, almost, I guess the question, if our tech departments are more diverse themselves, will our technology show that?
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's the latter of the two. I think that the workforce needs to reflect more Black and brown, more Black and brown Indigenous people of color. The numbers are pretty abysmal. We're making strides. A lot of diversity reports were just released. I know Microsoft just released their diversity report. We're definitely year over year making progress. I like to see more. But at the end of the day, even if it's a one percentage point, a percentage point and a half, I guess at 150,000 plus person org, that is significant. But there's a long ways to go. And I don't know if y'all been looking at these diversity reports, but pay attention. They're very interesting to analyze and very interesting to read. And I would invite you to check Microsoft's diversity report out as well.
I'll definitely do that. Very cool. Yeah, and I'm wondering too. When I think of this question, I'm thinking more towards Aliya, but I'm sure that all of you could answer this. I'm thinking, in the film, it had mentioned not only just facial recognition and basically, connecting itself to somebody in that moment, but even being able in the future to make predictions about people. What other areas, in addition to, because we're talking about, they mentioned like higher insurance rates or, obviously law enforcement, and they had mentioned, employment at one area. What other areas can you guys see this being detrimental to? I'm sitting here thinking healthcare, education. I'm thinking there's so many different areas where if this is not used right, that could actually backfire.
Well, in every area of society, right? Think about where we are right now. We're in the midst of a pandemic, right? A COVID pandemic, and we're looking at instituting a new vaccine. So let's talk about predictive analytics. Let's talk about AI and the use of that when it comes to who gets access to the vaccines, who gets access to firsthand medication, right? If the programs that are being written are not inclusive of the community being served, then it will be biased, right? So we have to look at who is writing those codes, who is in charge of overseeing. One of the areas of work that I focus in on is looking at it from a healthcare perspective, looking at the demographics of the population at hand and how we can really help to zone in on these underserved communities, being the Blacks and the minorities. Because when we look at insurance bias, insurance looks at all of the areas of a person, right? From where you live to where you work to how high your cholesterol is to how well you control your hypertension, if you have it. And so when you think about COVID and we're trying to eradicate this disease, this pandemic, think about who is going to be first in line to not receive any vaccines based on, these algorithms that are being written about certain populations at hand. From an education standpoint, we're having virtual classrooms right now. But if we look at how is that determined and look at the analytics behind how is it determined what schools open first, who gets first resources to having certain opportunities. There's always numbers. There is a numbers, right? Numbers help us to really understand the community at hand.
Yeah, I'm going to touch on, I think I'm going to touch on 2 points. The first point, there needs to be a diverse and inclusive workforce, but that starts off not just having employees, but actually having people that are managers and hiring managers that can make the decisions of bringing people onto the team. I think in these reports of we need more diverse workforce, it starts at making sure that the teams also have leaders. For the second point that you mentioned, Stanford on November 10th, they released a study creating a predictive model that looks at COVID spread. And that the study looked at data sets around different metropolitan areas. So Miami was included in one of those. And in that work, they also included a look at different demographics. So people think of Black and brown and people think of Hispanic and Latinx, but they're also Hispanic and Latinx isn't a monolith. So you have to dive deeper into that. So I think work like that and kind of understanding the COVID-19 spread and being able to release that report and putting transparency on that kind of helps organizations and people, especially in communities like us, to keep it more accountable. I think about it from the software development lens. When you're pushing something out, you don't just push it out and get it to production. You have to spend some time testing it out. You have to do code reviews. You have to look at the methodologies. I think we need more of that in inspections, especially at the local level. We also need to hold government accountable. I think about AI is dangerous, and yes, it's dangerous in the hands of big tech companies, but the people suffering from it that are minorities or marginalized communities typically access these government services that they're trying to reach, whether it's trying to get unemployment, whether it's trying to get food stamps. So we really need to make sure it's getting right for the people that are most vulnerable. And I think that's a lens that I really want to stress.
Oh, that's a great point. I actually didn't even think of that side of it. It's a great point, Gregory.
Yeah, and just to add to that, now with this global pandemic, everyone is being affected. People who have never been affected are being affected in ways they've never been affected before, financially, career-wise, et cetera. And so when you talk about, the ways that it can impact, we talked about, I'm sorry, Aliya mentioned, when we talk about education, we talk about jobs, but what about in this current climate when it comes to who's getting approved for these funds, right? What banks are approving these businesses for these loans? When it comes to who's getting evicted, when it comes to who's getting approved to, for housing, to buy homes, everything now is literally, it could affect all aspects of our life. And unfortunately, all of us, especially us in communities of color, can fall victim in a variety of ways. So it's very important that we know who is doing these codes, who's writing the codes. I know Gregory does a lot of work, especially on the government side, when it comes to civic innovation, when it comes to artificial intelligence, and how it can be used, and just kind of the current climate of what we need to be focused on, and Microsoft and beyond. So definitely, I would even defer to Gregory when it comes to more like on the coding side, and kind of more on the he's created code. I have not done that before, but at the end of the day, yeah, definitely very important to know who's behind what and who's doing what.
Yeah, and I did have, another thing that I wanted to talk about here, because I know we've got just a few minutes left, is, when I'm watching the film, I was watching at the end with the young Chinese girl that was basically saying that she thought it was a positive and she didn't see the negative effects of it. I'm sure that there's people that are going to be watching this film or come across any type of content like this and said, I don't care about this, or I don't understand it, or maybe they just aren't fully fearful of the consequences of having systematic racial and gender, based prejudices in AI because it doesn't quote unquote affect them. What would you say to those people, or why would you all say that they should care?
Well, a lot of people choose to walk around with blinders on, right? A lot of people choose to walk around with blinders on until it affects them or their family. Then it becomes a problem. But unfortunately for us, it has been a problem for a long time. And so if you still want to walk around with blinders on and be, deaf and mute to it, then that's fine. But to take a stance and to make change, you have to be very vocal. You have to be, you have to get out into the community, and you have to get into those leadership positions to be able to make change and create change, which is what we're doing.
Yeah, and sorry, I blanked out. I meant healthcare, Aliya, education, jobs, healthcare. Sorry that you made the point about healthcare, how it's affecting everyone. But again, the collateral effects of this pandemic are off all aspects of society. As far as can you repeat that question again, Nikki, or the call of that question, your last question?
Sure. I was just asking, saying that I'm sure that there's people that are watching the film or come across content similar to this that don't understand the, I guess the effects of it, and why should they care?
Yeah. So definitely, as Aliya said, it's easy to just put the blinders on. It's easy to really be in denial. It's easy to be to not be a leader, like to be a follower and not even necessarily want to get out into the forefront and advocate for these issues. So, it's going to take somebody that, it's going to take people to, have, some type of passion and some type of empathy about the issue. And that's what, that's when it comes to any of these, racial and social injustice issues. You can, leaders lead, and you can be a leader, you can be a follower. You can be the change that you want to see or not. And so that's kind of, that's my take on it. And, now with COVID and just, with everybody at home, all eyes are on everybody. So, it's not, it's, if you're out there, people know what you stand for, and, people know if you're not advocating for anything, or, if you're on the, whatever position that you're on, we're in a very unique, whatever position you're in, we're in a very unique time right now where people are hyper-focused on, social media, hyper-focused on thought leaders, hyper-focused on, different organizations and their missions, and, the leaders of, from those organizations, and all of that. So I think, it's important that people know that, and that, don't be afraid to lead.
Yeah. I mean, it's either you can, what does it say? You either stand for something or fall for anything. At some point, you got to grow a backbone, right? You have to grow the mind to think about not just yourself, but your family as well. Think about how it will affect. It's all a trickle down effect. It's a trickle down, and you have to think about your children, their friends, your family, and everyone in between. And so, my stance on it is I spend time with people who are ready to make a difference. The naysayers, those that wear blinders, we'll get back to them because they'll see it eventually. And we're going to keep pushing for change in the Black community and with minorities, for me, particularly in healthcare, in education. And we're going to continue to take it to the Hill. We're going to continue to call out injustices, and we're going to continue to ask for money for these communities. We're going to ask for more opportunities for these community research to be looked at in these communities, because we want to see change, and we're tired of just talking about it, right? So this is why we're here and what we know to be exact.
Yeah, I would add on to everything that everybody said, that, empathy has to be a part of your operating system. And for that to be something that you see as a problem, you also have to kind of like have an understanding of how this can impact not just you. And I take a good story around how we did a partnership with Miami-Dade College. We set up an event, and I remember setting up a facial recognition kiosk where we used Microsoft's Cognitive Services API, and we set it up, and we had it in a stand, and there was a group of kids, honors students, most studies, computer science. And through that, on the screen, they could literally see the camera that was analyzing all their faces, getting gender, getting an age estimate. And at the end of it, I think we had all the data of how many faces were scanned and how many people were there. And at that conversation, we talked about how this can be used to find on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all these different things, and how much information we can get just off those pictures. At the end of it, all the information was deleted. That's how that program was written for that particular event. But having so many people of different demographics kind of see that connection of, hey, I could just take your face, run this Twitter API or Facebook API and find you, really kind of put in position of, hey, this needs to be regulated. And I think more conversations around that. I think we need to have that, not scare factor, but events that displays how easy it is to get your information and why it needs to be something that's not only a debate at the higher federal level, but also at the local municipal level. And lastly, I think it's just like they said, you have to have leaders in the community doing the work, but not just showing up as observers of tech. I think Miami's problem is we have a lot of observers, not practitioners. I would never step into something and be like, I'm a lawyer. Temanté got a whole JD. I can't step into a place and be like, I know about everything about healthcare. Like, Aliya, she's a nurse. She's worked in the field. So I think to address some of these issues, especially relating to AI, you have to sit down with practitioners. It has to be interdisciplinary, meaning I can't do it alone. So I think it needs to be more of those conversations like this.
Yeah, I agree. And I was gonna, add too, just as you guys were talking, it made me think back in the film where they were, so the different areas where they were showing, like in the UK, I mean, there was obviously the one example where they used of the young Black 14-year-old boy, but there was a lot of the people too. I mean, even the people on the team were white. But over there, it seems to be that it's fully being utilized over there, and there's still a lot of their community that's not happy with it, in general. And I'm thinking that maybe once those type of things start happening, it's going to start catching the attention of the people who quote unquote don't care because it doesn't affect them, because it will. It's going to start affecting them, and that's why a lot of them should care, is because you're going to be watched when you're going in and out of restaurants. Your family's going to be watched. I mean, and I think maybe that, we were talking about, I forget which one of you was talking about empathy, but it's just that really, I think empathy turns to sympathy once you've actually lived through it. And it seems like in the UK, they're living through it, no matter what the color of your skin is it's actually happening to everybody as a whole there. So I think just learning from those examples, because like I had no idea, watching the film, that was the first time that I even realized that was fully, I guess in place in the UK. I had no idea whatsoever.
Yeah, and oftentimes people become engrossed in understanding when it becomes relative to them.
Exactly.
So,
and I believe it's full swing in China too. They were saying, right?
Yeah.
It's just in your face. It's just they're transparent about it. But yeah, I didn't know.
But do you think that's better though, to be, because it's saying here that we're not transparent about how we're utilizing it and there's no regulations and so on. There, it seems like they're fully transparent about it, but is that really better?
I mean, it seems to me better. And I mean, between that and the GDPR going on in Europe, it seems like, other countries are more focused on, regulation than we are, or at least transparency. I would always choose transparency, full transparency over not, personally. So
agree.
And I just want to thank Randy for all your comments in chat too. I'm watching them all. I love them. His last comment was precog police minority report coming ? And that's exactly what I was thinking too. And I was reading some articles before watching the film, but we've got, it's about 8:50. So we're just over time now. I just wanted to, one, thank all of you for coming here. And then two, just to kind of leave us off, do all of you want to give us like a last, kind of like your last thoughts or kind of what to leave us with tonight?
Sure. I mean,
ladies first. Go ahead, Aliya.
I would say, the last thought would be to don't let it die on the doorstep. Continue the conversation, continue the dialogue, continue to, submerge yourself in the community, in the leadership role that it takes to really bring issues such as health disparities, such as education, and all the various areas that we talked about to light, and continue to have these conversations and push for innovation in technology in the various industries that are represented.
I mean, it's amazing what strength in numbers can do, collective advocacy when it comes to making change. And so I feel like let's keep the focus on these issues when it comes to data and artificial intelligence, how it's being used, especially the biases that exist. Let's advocate for change. Let's actually let's get change, right? Let's advocate for change. Let's strengthen numbers. Let's petition the people in Washington. Let's petition the leaders. Let's petition our local politicians. Let's petition our federal leaders, our federal politicians. Let's, as a lawyer, right? We saw in the film, the Georgetown Law Center was, really involved in what's going on. And that's always going to be the case. Lawyers are going to be at the forefront of, this type of change. And so between that and the community, advocating for legislation and, policy, whatever you want to call it, I think that we can make tremendous strides. But if the focus is not there, then it's not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just end by saying, facial recognition technology raises issues that are the fundamental human rights protection of our privacy and freedom of expression. That's just how it is. And in order to create change, you need to be a part of a movement. You can't just talk about it. You can't just be an observer, support. The way we're doing that is through our Justice hack or justice discovery challenge, where we developed 2 product solutions around data standards for transcripts, local government, as well as around police disciplinary records. And we've worked with government to build different predictive models before. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to codeforsouth.org. But we need people that are here, not just as travelers of saying, oh, this is nice, let me take a peek at it. We need people committed to it, consistent at it. And if you can't be that leader, find and support those that are doing the work.
Very good. Thank you so much. And I will make sure for all of those that have RSVP tonight, even for the ones that weren't able to make it, if any of you have information that you want to send to me, I'll make sure to include that in the follow-up email. But again, I just wanted to thank all of you, for coming. I know it's late on a Sunday night, so I know it's not the normal hour for a panel discussion. So thank you so much. And of course, everybody here that watched the film, because I think that is the start of it, is just educating yourselves and starting this discussion and continuing this discussion. And I definitely love what you all were saying too, just about including the lawyers, the lawmakers, the clinicians. It's definitely a team effort. Not one person can make this happen. So again, thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.